Tuesday night, the Democratic primaries in Michigan were quite interesting. They went late. No, I didn't stay up for that, but it turns out in the morning that by a slim margin, Dr. Abdul Al Sayed did win the Democratic nomination for Senate against Haley Stevens, or Representative Stevens, who's a more, shall we say, mainstream Democratic politician. Although in Michigan, sometimes that can mean different things than it would mean, for instance, in New Hampshire. But it was a race that a lot of people were watching because Dr. Al Sayed happens to be more of a progressive kind of candidate. Some people have called him a socialist. Personally, I don't know him personally. I don't know exactly how he describes himself, but it's fair to say that it was more to the left of Stevens. And he did win that nomination for the Senate seat. Now he's going to go against Mike Rogers, the Republican, who won his nomination against nobody, because the Republican Party is like that these days. If you're not endorsed by Donald Trump, nobody wants to hear about you. And what I found especially interesting in the race. And here's how I'm thinking about it. And I have to say it, maybe some of that is wishful thinking on my part. So apply as much salt as you think is necessary here. But I have been listening to a lot of interviews with voters in Michigan and volunteers on both campaigns, and including journalists who have been on the ground for the last days and sometimes weeks. And what appears to be happening is two things. Well, maybe two and a half. One, I think there's a huge amount of opposition to politics as usual. I think Americans, by and large, and this is not just true of this particular cycle, I think it's been true since Bernie Sanders almost won that nomination. Remember that year? I think people are sick and tired of politics as usual, especially on the Democratic side, because you have a number, like the candidates that are endorsed or pushed by the executive of the party. Think about Hillary Clinton, who was not especially popular among the rank and file of the party, and Kamala Harris, last presidential election. Again, if the party executive had allowed for people to compete against Joe Biden and made him leave because he was way too old for this race, we would have had, perhaps Kamala Harris would have won, but there would have been a good competition. And I think the rank and file wanted this. I think people are sick and tired of being told how to vote. And they go for people like Al Sayed. They go for people like Graham Plattner in Maine. Now, obviously, he had some other issues, and now he's disqualified, and that's all fine and good. But before we knew of the alleged offenses that are disqualifying sexual assault, not to name it, there were a lot of people defending his candidacy, saying, "We're sick and tired of the polished candidates, and we want some real people." And I'm so glad to see it. You see it also to a lesser extent in James Tallarico in Texas. You see it with John Ossoff in Georgia. And I'm sure there's even Jasmine Crockett in Texas, who lost against Tallarico. Again, very outspoken, very plain spoken kind of politician, like almost like a normal person's idea of a politician. Um, I like that this seems to be happening. Again, this could be wishful thinking on my part, but I think it's high time. I think there's people are so sick and tired of that kind of politics that they're almost at the point of throwing up. They've had it. So that's one. The other thing is that there's a lot of anger. And this is on the part, and again, you hear this when you take the time to listen to interviews with local media, with regular people on the ground. There's a lot of anger at Republicans this time around, for not standing up to Donald Trump, for allowing Donald Trump to run roughshod over institutions. The ICE business doesn't go very well, and any number of other things, including the Epstein files that are still not sorted out. I think you have a lot of appetite, certainly for the midterms. I don't know what that's going to mean for 2028, but this year in November, I think there's huge appetite for saying, okay, out with the Republicans. Everywhere we can, we're going to push back against them because they should have stood up to Donald Trump. And then related to that, I think what you're seeing is, and again, I've heard a number of people say this, that when you're thinking about which candidate you should want to vote for in a primary, you're thinking, so not just who's the candidate that I like best, who's the candidate I think represents my views, my priorities the best, But also at the back of your mind is always who is liable to do better in the general election. So you kind of vote, and we do this in Canada too, right? We say, I really want to vote NDP, for instance, um, but I don't want the Conservatives to win in my writings, so I'll vote Liberal to make. So we people are trying to vote strategically, and this time around, I'm hearing a lot of people on the ground saying, "I did that before and I wound up with a result that I didn't really like. I wound up with a person representing me, and especially in Congress, representing me who I did not feel had my priorities in mind, had my best interests at heart. This time around, screw this. I'm going to vote with my heart. I'm going to vote for someone I really want." And again, maybe that's wishful thinking. Maybe it's a little bit of wishful. I don't know exactly. We'll find out in November, and we'll find out also as other primaries keep happening. But if I am right about this, personally, I will be very happy because I do think that we've had way too much of politics that is polished and like almost, it's like a puppet show, administered or managed by the people in the executive of the party, and that's especially true of the Democrats. The Republicans do it a different way. It's Donald Trump decides everything, but the Democrats have been guilty over many many years of trying to arrange things and like guiding the rank and file so they vote the way that the executive wants, and I think people are sick and tired of that, and I think it's time that we got to a politics that is much much more, not just for the people but by them, and with politicians who look and feel and sound like normal people. We couldn't do worse than what the Democratic Party has been doing for the last couple of cycles. And, they've given us Donald Trump by not being able to get their shit together and get their candidates or the right kinds of candidates that real people on the ground could vote for. And I hope that what we're seeing in Michigan, what we're seeing in Texas, what we're seeing in Maine, um, is a early sign of better things to come when it comes to representative politics. And I really, really hope I'm right about this. And I'll be watching for more of those kinds of candidates winning primaries and ideally elections come November.